All right, so we're diving into something that's got everyone talking, the sudden exit of Dan Ashworth from Manchester United.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, isn't it?
I mean, 5 months ago, he was the guy everyone wanted the sporting director with the Midas touch. And Man U, they snagged him with all the fanfare in the world.
Exactly.
And now, poof, he's gone just like that.
Yeah.
A ton of you have sent in sources, news articles, insider reports. Even Gary Neville's weighing in on this.
Oh, yeah. Gary's got some thoughts.
Because this isn't just another transfer rumor, right?
Right.
This has people asking what's really going on at Old Trafford.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what's happening behind the scenes.
So we're going to try and piece together this puzzle for you today, do a real deep dive.
Absolutely. We've got to get to the bottom of this.
What makes this so intriguing is you've got Ineos taking over promising big changes. Ashworth was supposed to be a key part of that whole plan.
Oh, absolutely. He was the missing piece,
Yeah.
you know, the guy to build a winning culture.
He had the track record too, right?
Yeah.
Brighton, the FA, Newcastle,
Yeah, he'd proven himself everywhere he'd been.
and Man U, they went all out to get him. Paid a hefty compensation fee.
Didn't they?
Waited through that whole gardening leave thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long, expensive process.
It really shows how much they valued him at the time.
And then, bam, he's out the door.
Just like that.
A generic statement from the club, no real explanation.
Nope, none whatsoever.
So it does make you wonder if there's more to this story than just a simple mutual agreement, right?
Well, I think there's definitely more to it.
All the whispers and speculation.
Yeah, it's like a drama unfolding off the pitch, and we've got the best seats in the house.
So let's unpack those whispers, shall we? What are the theories, the possible triggers for this sudden exit?
Well, one of the biggest ones revolves around Eric Ten Hag.
Ten Hag.
Yeah, the decision to keep him as manager after a, not so great season seems to be a major factor here.
Interesting.
Sources suggest that Ashworth, well, he favored a change at the helm.
You wanted a new manager.
It seems that way, but Ratcliffe and others in the power structure, they pushed to keep Ten Hag.
Really?
Yeah, and this difference of opinion, well, it seems to have created some friction from the get-go.
Okay, so they keep Ten Hag, but wouldn't that have given Ashworth more stability to actually, implement his vision?
You would think so, right?
They did spend a massive amount of money
200 million pounds.
on new players under Ten Hag,
Yeah.
presumably with Ashworth input.
Well, that's where things get a bit more complicated.
Oh, boy.
Because none of those expensive signings have really delivered yet.
So are we saying Ashworth was being held accountable for those signings, even though the decision to stick with Ten Hag wasn't entirely his?
It's a good question, isn't it?
And then you've got those profit and sustainability rules in football.
Right.
They're meant to prevent clubs from, just spinning their way out of trouble.
Exactly.
And Man U, with their recent losses, well, they're under even more financial pressure.
They are.
So every transfer decision is under a microscope.
Oh, yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
So you've got disagreements about the managers are best to right, expensive flops in the transfer market, and these looming financial constraints.
It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
It sounds like a pressure cooker.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And on top of all of that, you've got the tactical side of things.
Right.
The whispers are that Ashworth, he wanted to establish a consistent tactical style for the club, no matter who the manager was.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It does make sense for long-term recruitment. Building a team that plays a certain way attracts players who fit that style.
Exactly. You create a clear philosophy to guide their recruitment strategy.
So that sounds sensible enough.
But then Ten Hag is eventually replaced with Ruben Amorim.
Amorim.
And he favors a completely different tactical system.
So that throws a wrench in Ashworth's plans.
It does.
Raises questions about whether his vision really aligned with where the club was heading.
Exactly.
So you're suggesting this clash over tactical direction, coupled with all that pressure to perform, and the financial limitations could have pushed Ashworth out.
It's definitely a possibility.
And that leads us to the next layer of this whole saga, the power dynamics within Manchester United.
The power dynamics, oh yeah, that's where things get really interesting.
Help me untangle this web, because it sounds like there are a lot of big personalities involved here.
Oh, there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as they say. So you've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the co-owner, the guy who's clearly passionate about Manchester, not afraid to voice his opinions.
Right.
Then you've got Omar Barada, the CEO. He came from Manchester City.
Right.
He's responsible for the day-to-day operations.
Okay.
And then there's Sir Dave Brailsford. He's the director of Ineos's sports division, a close confidant of Ratcliffe's.
Right.
And he led that big review of the club after Ineos took over.
So that's a lot of big personalities, all with their own ideas and priorities.
It is.
I can see how that could lead to some serious clashes.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for someone like Ashworth, who's trying to establish his own vision. And then on top of that, you've got people like John Murtough, the football director, and Andy O'Boyle, the deputy football director.
Right. They were already at the club before Ashworth arrived.
Exactly. So you can imagine all these conflicting ideas, different approaches.
Yeah, that's got to create some friction.
It does. It makes it difficult for anyone to really exert their influence.
So you've got this clash of personalities, this struggle for control.
Yeah.
But how does that actually play out in terms of, making decisions?
Right.
Is it possible that Ashworth was just sidelined, that his recommendations were ignored?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Or overruled?
Remember Ratcliffe said publicly that Man U has to have the best recruitment in the world?
Yeah.
So maybe he had very specific ideas about how to achieve that?
Okay.
And perhaps Ashworth's approach didn't quite align with those expectations.
It's interesting, though. They go through this whole elaborate process to bring Ashworth in.
Right, it was a big deal.
But then it seems like there's this lack of trust or a willingness to let him do his thing.
It makes you wonder if they ever really believed in him from the start.
Almost like a PR move.
Yeah, like they just wanted to make a statement to the world that they were serious about change.
But not actually committed to his philosophy.
It's cynical, I know, but it's not entirely implausible.
It's not, is it?
And if that's the case, it's a pretty worrying sign about how decisions are made at Man U.
So we've got these power struggles, lack of a clear vision.
Yeah.
Then you add in the financial constraints, the pressure to perform, the need to keep the fans happy.
Oh, yeah. You can't forget about the fans.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is.
It's no surprise that something had to give.
And in this case, it seems like Ashworth was the one who paid the price.
It does make you think back to what Gary Neville said.
Yeah.
About Ashworth's departure being a symptom of deeper problems at the club.
Could he have been a scapegoat?
That's the question, isn't it?
Was he just a convenient fall guy for bigger issues?
I mean, if we strip away all the personalities, the speculation, we're left with a club that seems to be struggling to find its identity.
They are, aren't they?
They've tried throwing money at the problem, bringing in big names, but nothing seems to be working.
Nope.
And now they've let go of a respected sporting director, a guy with a proven track record.
What does that tell you?
It raises some serious questions about their long-term strategy.
It does.
Do they even have a plan, or are they just reacting to each crisis as it comes up?
That's what makes this whole situation so fascinating.
It's not just about Dan Ashworth.
It's not. It's about the future of Manchester United, one of the biggest clubs in the world.
And their current trajectory, it's not looking good.
It's not. It raises serious concerns about their ability to compete at the top level.
And what about the players?
Right, the players.
Imagine trying to perform at your best when there's all this uncertainty at the top.
It must be demoralizing.
It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand.
The players need to feel confident that the club has a clear direction, that the people in charge are making decisions that will benefit the team in the long run.
Yeah.
But this whole Ashworth situation, it just adds another layer of doubt and instability.
So we've explored the disagreements over Ten Hag, the clash of personalities, the financial pressures, the lack of a cohesive vision. Where do we go from here?
Well, to understand where they go from here, we need to look beyond Ashworth's departure.
Okay.
It's important to see this as a symptom, a warning sign.
A flashing red light.
That something fundamental needs to change at the club.
Yeah. It feels like we've peeled back the layers of this onion and found a whole bunch of problems underneath.
We have, haven't we?
It really does seem like Ashworth's exit is just, the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's more than just one person leaving, isn't it?
Right. It's like a symptom of a bigger issue.
Exactly. They're stuck in this cycle of short-term thinking, always reacting instead of fixing the underlying problems.
So are we saying it's less about finding the perfect sporting director and more about fixing the things that make it impossible for anyone in that role to succeed?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
They've tried throwing money at the problem, haven't they?
Oh, they have brought in big names,
Right.
spent a fortune.
But without a real strategy, it's just a Band-Aid solution.
It's not going to fix anything long-term.
And all this constant change with managers and sporting directors, that doesn't exactly breed confidence, does it?
No, it doesn't. It creates so much instability.
How can anyone implement a long-term vision when things are changing all the time?
It's like trying to build a house when the blueprints keep changing.
Right. You ended up with something that's just a mishmash of ideas.
Exactly. A structure that's unstable and Doesn't really make sense.
And at the end of the day, it's the fans who suffer.
Oh, absolutely.
They're the ones who are invested in this club.
They're the ones who care the most.
They deserve better than this constant drama and uncertainty.
They do. They deserve to see some signs of progress.
So what needs to happen? What can they do to get back on track?
Well, they need leadership. Strong, decisive leadership.
Okay.
Leaders who can unite everyone behind a shared vision.
So it's not just about changing personnel.
No, it's about changing the whole culture of the club.
Moving away from that short-term thinking.
Exactly. Embracing a more strategic, long-term approach.
It's like turning a giant ship around.
It is, isn't it?
It takes time and effort.
And a collective will to make it happen.
It's a huge challenge.
It is, but it's not impossible.
Well, we've certainly given everyone a lot to think about today.
We have.
Dan Ashworth's departure was clearly more than just a personnel change. It was a sign of something much bigger going wrong at Manchester United.
A symptom of a much deeper problem.
And while we don't have all the answers, I think this deep dive has given everyone a better understanding of the challenges facing the club.
It's a fascinating story, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. So for you listening out there, was Ashworth a scapegoat for deeper problems, or was there just a genuine mismatch between his vision and the club's direction?
What do you think?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the curious case of Dan Ashworth and the future of Manchester United.